What was the dumbest thing you thought as a child? I used to think that once you finished a grade in primary school you became smarter than the teacher of that grade. Just like Pokemon gym leaders. I've known a couple cases where this is at least borderline true. My teachers had some real bad moments looking back. I probably passed my second grade teacher in middle school. Why do I hear boss music? That I would have to change my name when I grew up. I don't know why, but I thought my name was suitable for a child, but definitely not for an adult, and I couldn't imagine being an adult with my name. I even talked to my mother about it, saying that at some point we'd eventually have to go to court to have it changed to something more adult sounding. I have an old-fashioned name. It's become more popular now, but when I was a kid the only people I knew with my name were over 70. It really bothered me that I had an old lady name instead of a kid's name. Elvia, Grace, Emily, Alice, Eleanor, Camille. I used to believe that night is brought about by clouds, dark ones, of course. Never felt the need to clarify this with anybody, it was an obvious fact. I used to think trees made wind. Trees move, wind happens, can't explain that. Edit. My highest rated comment is about how dumb of a kid I was. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. Tips Fedora. I was recently talking with a data scientist about how non-data scientists could misinterpret data. He actually gave me this exact example of someone he knew who used to think that to describe causation versus correlation. The trees are really sneezing today. That a blowjob meant you blow air in a boy's general direction. Thanks to my older siblings for making me believe that one. LOL, I knew it was more than in a general direction, but I did think the phrase was fairly literal. Poor first boyfriend. This was something that came up in middle school. Long story short, a boy comes back from the bathroom during a school event. School was not in session, but people were on the grounds, I want to say it was a basketball game, and proclaimed he got a BJ and stated, I don't know why my dad makes a big deal about it. It didn't feel good at all. She just blew the whole time and I never got hard. That if you drink while peeing you'll keep peeing until you stop drinking. Why are you drinking while peeing first of all? I'm not, or rather I didn't, cause I didn't want to infinitely pee. Why would you not want to infinitely pee? That's how you get the infinity kidney stone. When I was really young, I was convinced I was pregnant. I'm a man BTW, with a baby cat named Bridget. My family decided to see how long I would believe this, so they never told me how ridiculously impossible it was. I went on believing it for about 5 months, that's how long little me thought cat pregnancy lasted, and then when the baby never came, I went to my mom and asked when Bridget would be born. She finally told me that boys can't get pregnant, and humans can't give birth to cats. I was traumatized, little me was so excited to be a cat father, and then it was ripped away from me. I was such a stupid kid. Edit. Since so many people keep asking. No, I never ended up getting a cat, and no, I didn't fuck a cat LMAO. This would have been around 6 years old, and I was raised Catholic and thought God put babies in your stomach, so I thought he put a cat in me. And as for the name, I just really like the name Bridget, and I still do. I'm sorry for your loss, but I am cry laughing at my desk right now. That all companies with the TM trademark were owned by my family, only because those are my initials. Edit. Are not were. Is your name trademarked? Probably trademark. More like trademark. There it is. I was very young and I blame Wizard of Oz, but I believed that a tornado was just one big phenomenon that continuously happened and spun from state to state, country to country. I also live in the south, so we have frequent tornado warnings, so I vaguely remember a time we had 2 or 3 warnings in 1 week, and I was scared the single tornado would come to our town and never go away. I thought tornadoes were super cool, but also was deathly afraid of them after seeing Twister. During a bad storm with the tornado watcher warning I was flipping out. My mom said sometimes tornadoes will lift up off the ground and go over houses, and we'd be okay. Well, I was convinced that meant tornadoes either went straight up the street hitting every house, or would alternate skipping over one house and hitting the other. I started crying because I hoped it would be the kind that skipped houses, but knew if it skipped ours, then our neighbors on both sides would be gone, and I felt bad for preferring that. When I was a young kid, maybe between 5 and 9, my dad took me to the tiny grass runway airport in my town, and we went on a short plane ride in a small Cessna around the valley. My dad sat in the back, and I was up front with the pilot. While we taxied off the ramp and out to the runway, I was given permission to move the yoke. I thought I was steering the aircraft the whole way. I told my mom that I taxied the plane. In school I told my class that I taxied the plane. In fact, it was so strong a memory that I grew up remembering the memory without evaluating the experience. I was home on leave from a Naval Aviation Squadron when I was talking about that flight with my dad, and I was thinking about it. And I had this long pause. And I said, holy shit, Dad, I just realized that I wasn't steering that Cessna. My father laughed his ass off. Why did you realize you weren't steering the plane? Is a yoke some kind of steering mechanism that only works in the air, and they have a different way to steer on the ground? Yes, you are right. The steering, yaw, i.e., left or right, is done with the foot pedals which connect to the rudder on the vertical edge of the tail of the aircraft. What I was moving, the yoke, would only move the ailerons which would control the roll of the plane during flight, or by pushing the yoke forward or pulling back, would change the pitch, i.e., lower the nose into a diving position, or rise into a climbing position, again, during flight. Because we were on the ground, the pilot was in full control of the taxi maneuver by steering with the foot pedals and controlling the throttle and prop. On the ground you steer with the rudder pedals. Steering linkage is hooked to the rudder pedals. Yoke controls pitch and roll, both of which are things that happen on the ground. I was under the impression that there were tiny rats that lived inside of my stomach, and when they ran in their wheels for exercise, it would make me need to pee. What the fuck? I have one about needing to pee. When I was in elementary school and I got random erections, I thought that meant I had to pee, even if my bladder didn't feel full. Thinking about it made me actually have to pee though, so it was a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Pavlov conditioning yourself into being a piss fetishist. I thought that highways functioned like airport moving walkways. Imagine how fast we could go. Man in audience. What if we used 100% of the highway? Hands to Morgan Freeman's face. I paid for the whole speedometer. I'm gonna use the whole speedometer. I believed hamburger and hot dog buns were only available for restaurants, not civilians. Mom used sliced bread toasted to obliterate the gums at home to make burgers and hot dogs. I believed that until the age of 10. Can you imagine? Such dangerous items in the hands of the untrained public? Better leave it to the professionals. My mother did this too. Hamburger and hot dog buns are crazy cheap though. I don't understand why she thought she was saving so much money doing it with bread and sacrificing the enjoyment of actual buns. If you are poor enough where a few dollars actually mean something, it's because you get a whole bag of white bread for 99 cents, but it's like $2.29 for the hot dog buns, and you only get 8. Plus, you get real acquainted with Armour brand hot dogs in the Northeast. Also, when you are a kid and poor, it's super fun to wrap the bread all the way around the hot dog and roll it so the bread gets crushed down. Like a mystery meat burrito. Now that I am an adult and not poor, I buy the expensive ass hot dogs and nothing but Martin's potato buns. Fuck, being poor sucked. I don't worry about bills and I buy proper hot dog buns. This is the correct definition of rich. RS hot dogs held us down in New York. Chicken, pork and beef. How opulent. I remember watching the movie Cocoon with my grandparents. I could not have been more than 4. For some reason I deduced that in order to become adults, children had to die in these bull cocoons and be reborn old. I freaked my cousins out and had a whole group of kids crying at a holiday party over our impending doom. Ruined Christmas pictures that year. Are you by chance a caterpillar? That was your grandparents' fault for letting a 4-year-old watch that. I had a stuffed cola that I named Bernie after half-ass paying attention to Cocoon when my parents rented it. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time. Man, just a crazy far-off memory you just pinched in my head. I need to go check my parents' attic to see if Bernie is still there. That there's a tiny human inside the TV who executed what the remote was telling him to do. For example, when you press the button to increase the volume, he is being hit in a specific way that lets him know that he has to go and manually increase the volume. I imagined a barracks full of tiny men living in the tap who poured out little buckets of water when I used the sink. I used to think that there were tiny people living inside the traffic lights, just the traffic lights, not any other lights, and that when the light would change, the little people would flip the switches to turn their light on or off. That was before I learned what electricity was and learned that I was partially right. There are switches, just no little people inside flipping them. It's cool. Imma, stop now. I always thought that kids were born with your shit, so one day you would go to the toilet and take a dump, and then if you looked down there would be a child. And I thought that if you didn't check you might accidentally flush the baby. My older siblings told me that mom shit me out and tried to flush me down, but I managed to crawl out. It explained why I was a naturally good swimmer. I don't know why, but this is the funniest shit I've read all day. Underrated comment. Blurs in the best way. That if people are going to study something they just sit in a circle with other students and think about what they want to do. As soon as they find out, they are done and they can leave. I wish LOL I like the way younger you thought. Though we'd have too many Lego engineers if that was the method. Can you ever have too many Lego engineers? I played with Legos my little sister got me for Christmas 2019 last night while my SO was asleep. I'm 31. So definitely cannot have too many Lego engineers. I thought that there would be a baby inside every girl's stomach as soon as she is born, and inside that baby's stomach too there would be a tiny baby. The cycle goes on and that the baby keeps growing as we grow, and after getting married the doctors will cut the stomach and take the baby out to make space for another baby. Well, women are born with all their eggs in place, but not mature cells. I like that you clarified this. Well, of course. A lot of people don't know that it's only by absorbing 17 and 18 that you become perfect cell. My uncle is a priest for an obscure Hindu offshoot religion, and he told me quite young that I shouldn't play sport because each person only gets a set number of breaths in their life, and getting out of breath used them up quicker. I used to spend hours laying in bed trying to make my breaths as long and slow as possible. In fairness, I actually have a decent lung capacity as an adult, so maybe it had a positive effect. Geez, that had to scare the hell out of you. Good breathing technique for relaxing, but not if you're afraid you're going to die. Yeah, he's weird with his religion. My grandmother, his mom, died last year, and we had a funeral in a Christian church. He was doing a eulogy and then decided to tell everyone he was a Hindu priest and read out a passage from his holy book. He hadn't pre-warned anyone about this. I don't think I've ever seen anyone hold back rage more than the vicar at that moment. That the Underground Railroad was a literal secret underground subway-style steam engine that Harriet Tubman was the conductor of. I don't know where I got messed up because while I understood it wasn't a literal railroad, I did think it was literally underground. Just secret tunnels from all over leading north. Edit. So I don't have to reply to all comments individually. No, the Underground Railroad was not exclusively underground as I thought as a child. One couldn't enter a tunnel in Alabama and pop up hundreds of miles later at the Ohio River. They used underground to mean secret or hard to find unless you know the right people, like an underground nightclub. I'm 26. This is what I thought until just now. Edit. Glad to know a lot of you are on the same page. Thanks for all the updated facts. And the silver. I guess we weren't super wrong. Thanks to other Redditors, I learned that a lot of the hiding places on the Underground Railroad were cellars, basements, mines, etc. So technically we're not wrong. Just not crazy tunnels stretching hundreds of miles. This was fun. Tons of pictures for kids of the Underground Railroad show Harriet Tubman Underground going through a mine shaft, so probably that. I think you've identified it here. So many pictures showing Tubman hiding folks underground in old tunnels and basements, easy to see how kids would make the connection to Secret Tunnel North. I was vaguely aware of a TV show called Ironsides about a lawyer in a wheelchair. Whenever I heard the word paralegal, I thought it meant a paraplegic lawyer. It made sense to me that people in wheelchairs could make excellent lawyers based on the nature of the job and their physical limitations. I thought paralegals were lawyers who'd parachute to the scene of a crime so people would have their story straight before the cops showed up. Like paratroopers. That is an amazing image. Especially if they're already in wheelchairs. I thought if you left a video game on then a character would come out of the TV and kill you. I was a bit paranoid as a small kid. Building on that paranoia, I thought those for sale by owner and the existence of just for sale signs implied that many houses were for sale not by owner. I thought sometimes a random person came to your house and put it up for sale without your consent. Little did I know I had discovered the concept of foreclosure. Foreclosure is the process of going from owning 0 houses to owning -1 house. What? Grandparents were assigned to families. Like, I didn't know my grandma was my dad's mom. I don't know what I thought, but I remember being at my great-grandmother's funeral and asking my mom why my grandma was crying. When she replied, she is sad because her mother died, I was like head explodes, so that's why we had to go visit her all the time. I just assumed she was this random old lady, and I didn't like to visit her because I couldn't be my rambunctious chatty little 4-year-old self. My mom is a shusher. I then had to ask about all of our other relatives. I was 4 when my great-grandma died. I remember sitting with my grandma and she explained that great-grandma was her mom, so that kinda helped me understand why she was so sad. But then I asked, are you going to get a new mommy now? That made her laugh, so at least I was able to comfort her just a little. Same, I remember asking my mom, why did Uncle Greg call Grandma Mom? One of my nephews burst out with your cousin's name as Mom. At Christmas. He's like 7. No idea what was going through his head. My sister and I told my nephew that we were sisters and he just kept going, no, you're not. Mine was blown further when we told him Grammy was both of our moms. LMAO. We got to do it again with my niece, same reaction. Your mom's sister? I think she was more confused because she's the only girl with 3 brothers, so having 2 girls be sisters confused her a lot. That the local mosque in my city was Aladdin's vacation home. Over there's the bakery, that over there is the bank. Excuse me? Oh, that? Haha, well, that's Aladdin's vacation home. Similarly, I didn't realize there was anything supernatural about God and Jesus. I just thought they were a father and a son around my own age at the time that lived in the cathedral nearby. Just like my mom and I lived in an apartment together. That's so cute. I felt terrible as a kid to eat. I wouldn't eat in front of people, and every meal I would find myself thinking poor food getting eaten because I was convinced they had emotions. I anthropomorphized everything as a kid. I also felt bad for the food I ate and for stepping on grass. The worst was stuffed animals. I remember we had a Christmas thing at school in 1st grade in which everybody brought a gift, and then the teacher drew numbers to see who would get to pick the next gift. There was a huge Cabbage Patch tea set that all of the girls were drooling over, including me. Well, my number was called first, but I skipped the tea set and picked this dirty old teddy bear because I could not stand the thought of him sitting there watching as everything else got picked before him. Aw. Now I'm picturing a kid who had no money to buy a gift for the class exchange, so they brought in a well-loved teddy bear, feeling terrified that nobody will like it and be mad at them. But what's the first thing to go? Their teddy bear. Some sweet little girl skipped over an amazing tea set and picked the bear instead. I used to believe that people that spoke other languages translated their language to mine in their head. OMG. I thought for years that French people thought in English but translated things in their head before they said them. I just assumed learning or speaking French was as difficult for them as it was for me. I went to French classes from age 4. It wasn't until I was probably 11/12 and really thought about it that I realized they think in French. Even now I would probably think in French like seriously I'm almost 30 and I'm not sure it's sunk in yet. As a Finnish person, I actually think in English like 50% of the time. Benefits of learning a language well, being able to think in multiple languages makes it easy for me to keep my thoughts in line when I can just switch languages to find words that best describe something. People that died in movies really died. I was watching a movie with my dad wherein the main character had his arm cut off. I turned to my dad and asked, that's fake, right? And my dad, very sincerely, said no, that actor's getting paid a lot of money to have his arm cut off. And all the color drained from my face and I said, oh, okay. I was in my early 20s when I had that aha moment where I realized he was messing with me. I had the opposite with my dad. I said something like, wow, she must have gotten paid a lot to cut her arm off for a movie, and he just looked at me like, what are you, stupid?
Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Tell me what you dislike or love about this video, so please comment below and hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime a new video is released. This is a WeCrow Media production.